Hello, and welcome to Good News Rhode Island, the show about Rhode Island and the people and places and events and businesses that make Rhode Island a great place to live, that build our communities. It's funny, but nothing impacts more of us all the time than recycling and then our own front porch and garbage and plastics and food products and clothing products that we have used but no longer can use. And so today we're going to be talking about recycling and the recycling center that's in Johnston. And I want to talk to Sarah Kite-Reeves, who's Director of Recycling Services and doing all kinds of things to talk about the program in Rhode Island that actually was in the forefront of most other states. And so we appreciate that and thank you. And Krystal Noiseux, who's here as the recycling program manager and basically responsible for education, which of course is the way we all learn what we should do and what we should not do. And probably all of us are doing a little of both at this point, so we're hoping to bring our education level up. But thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Now, how does someone get into recycling? I suppose your subject was biology or something, and you...
I get that all the time. Actually, no. When I was in college, I studied political science and actually stepped away from my field for a while to raise my daughter, and then got back into it as more of a volunteer. I started to work for the Rhode Island Sierra Club when my daughter started first grade. So I got into environmental issues and awareness there. And then from there, you mentioned Smithfield, I think by mistake, but actually I went to work for the town of Smithfield, and I was their recycling coordinator as well. And from there, I then jumped over to resource recovery.
So it's a somewhat logical. First of all, it's a political issue, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And we want our elected representatives to be conscious of what we're trying to do for recycling.
Certainly, because it benefits everyone in the state. And as you mentioned, we all make trash, and believe it or not, we all do have recycling. And some people think, oh, I don't have anything to recycle. Well, we all do. And it's getting the word out and making sure people understand what can and can't go in their recycling bin or cart. It's important.
Nothing emphasizes that point more than 1 week of not having pickup. Exactly. And everyone is worried about what's happening next because the whole city seems to change when there's too much trash around. So, Krystal, you are working as the educator. What was your background?
I have a really interesting story. I'm actually a native Rhode Islander, born and raised in Pawtucket, and my journey to this position started when my 5th grade teacher incorrectly told me that the landfill in Rhode Island was our state's highest point. It's not. I know that now, but I forgive him because it got me really interested in the concept of how much waste we produce and what we could do better. And at that time, recycling was just starting out in Rhode Island. We didn't even have a curbside pickup yet in Pawtucket. So I continued on that path, and I went to school for environmental science and ecology and done a lot of environmental education.
Well, good for you. Good for you. So how high is the site in Johnston?
If you're at the very top, we're 570 feet from sea level. Jeremoth Hill is 812 feet. tall,
Okay.
so it's much
So-
higher.
So
than
it's
the
much
landfill.
higher and definitely more beautiful, I would think.
It's a good view,
Unless you
good
like
view from the
trash.
top.
The
It's a
view
good
from the top is
top.
amazing. On a clear day, you can see all the way down Hope Bridge and the Pell
Oh,
Bridge.
there's an advertisement.
Sure. Come take a tour.
Okay, so you have lots to tell us about today, but first of all, let's just talk about the process, because there is this imagination that, you know, you throw something in a tin, in a bucket, in a bin, the truck comes along, it takes it, and it's just gone.
Magic. It's magic.
It's gone out of memory, and therefore it's gone out of reality.
Right.
And that's not true. So let's take a look at this picture,
Sure.
which shows the manufacturing plant, or the recycling plant that
Yeah.
is like a manufacturing plant.
Like a demanufacturing.
Yeah, it is.
That's true. It is demanufacturing.
Yeah, and what we do there is we accept the materials that come in from the bins and the carts, because, you know, as you said, people put their cart at the curb and they want it to go away, and then people don't realize that we are the away. There's an actual place, and there are actual people that have to manage and touch all of these materials as well. So it comes into the plant, it gets mixed together. Some people still separate their blue bin and their green bin, and that's okay, but when it gets to us, it does get mixed. And then it goes through various processes where the individual materials are then sorted out according to whether they're paper or cardboard or container, glass, metal, tin, and all of that gets sorted into the product that we then sell.
Okay. I had somehow understood, probably wrongly, that some of it was due to temperature differences and melting point of plastics and things. You're saying it's sorted by hand.
So there's a combination of mechanical sorting and hand sorting. So depending on the item, we do have some very high technological machines that can read the density of a plastic and will sort by that density. So it's not a melting point, but it's actually the density of the plastic. So we can sort that way, but some things still need to be pulled out by hand.
Okay, and you have people working with gloves on, but
Yes.
still there are concerns for those people. So why don't we start our discussion with that, because of course you want to assure safety.
Absolutely. That is our primary goal, that everyone who comes onto our site in the morning leaves our site in the same condition. Whether that's a visitor or an employee or a customer or a vendor, we want everyone to leave safely. And unfortunately, what has happened, every now and then, people mistakenly, I don't think they're doing it with malice at all, they'll put something in their cart or bin that really should not be there, whether it's flammable or whether it has the capability of puncturing, like a needle, can go through the gloves. They have very high-tech gloves, but they can still be pierced by a needle, and we want to make sure that our workers are safe.
All right, so we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So things come in, and then somebody miraculously buys them,
Yes.
which amazes me, because most of us think these aren't really usable, although I can imagine road surfaces with a lot of those bottles. I
Yeah.
can't imagine what else we can do, but anyway.
So many different applications, and actually, Resource Recovery Corporation is Rhode Island's largest exporter of goods. We ship out the most material of any manufacturing plant in the state, and it's an amazing thing to realize that there is a market for many, many of these materials. Aluminum cans, for example, they're one of the most highly recycled products on the planet because it takes that much less energy to recycle a can, and it can be recycled many, many times. That's actually a steel tin can.
Oops.
So, but that's also highly recyclable.
highly recyclable.
So we want as much of the aluminum cans as we can, emptying and rinsed as possible, of course, because they are highly, highly sought after. So we are able to get a good amount of money for those. And that's a good thing, because then we share the profits we make with each city and town.
Okay, so what is a aluminum can made into?
Other aluminum cans.
Aha,
Yes.
so it is literally recycled.
Yeah,
Yes.
full recycling, yep.
Okay, well, what else do you have in there that we could talk about what we're doing? How about aluminum foil?
Yeah, so the basic rule of thumb for metal recycling in your bin or cart at home in Rhode Island are cans, foil, and lids from your glass jars. So we have two main types of cans, right? We have our steel cans and our aluminum cans. We have the lids that might come off our glass jars and bottles, and then we have foil. So we have the kind that comes off the roll, and then we have the kind that comes in the tin shape. So all of these things can be recycled, but no other metal item should go in your bin or cart.
So I noticed that they're clean.
Yes.
And so do these go through the dishwasher or are they just rinsed out?
No, we ask people empty at a minimum and rinsed whenever possible. If you're home, you're right there in the kitchen, you have the kitchen sink, you can definitely give them a rinse. If you were at the ballpark and you finished this up and you didn't have a sink to wash it at, it would be okay to recycle it empty. But the cleaner the recyclables are, the more value that they have as recyclable materials.
Okay, so it's great to know that the next time you drink a Coke, it's actually out of recycled. It's probably the container might have been recycled. That's
Yes,
great.
for sure.
So what happens to the plastics? How about something like a huge detergent bottle, which really bothers me, how large they're getting and how thick they are?
Well, the good news is that we have just started to be able to take much larger plastic containers. It used to be only up to 2 gallons. Now we could take up to 5 gallons. So that has been a change that we recently implemented.
Can reach out here.
And here's an example of what a 5-gallon bucket looks like. So this is now the size that we can accept in your curbside bin or cart. And then within that, we have a whole host of different
examples
goodies.
of, what is a container. So, your tubs, your cups.
So yogurt,
Yes.
Right, exactly.
old coffee
Spray
cups.
trigger.
And the spray cleaner, you can even keep that trigger on.
Keep the caps
container.
right on, yeah.
Keep the caps on, keep the trigger on.
Something some people don't, they're not sure if it's a container or not. Clamshell containers like this. So whether it's a takeout salad container or sometimes
you do
plastic
recycle
eggs come
those.
in that. Yep.
Okay,
The keyword
please
is
wash them
container.
out.
Yeah, empty for sure. Empty is very important.
Container, container, container. So if it's not container, shouldn't go in your recycling bin or cart at home.
And you were telling me that recently you had an explosion in one of your recycling machines.
Yep. So sometimes people will they might, consider it a container, but it's something that has a hazardous material in it, or just an aerosol can that's not completely empty. So we do take metal aerosol cans because they're a metal can, right? Cans, lids, foil. But they have to be completely empty. So if I hold down the nozzle, I shouldn't hear anything. There shouldn't be any noise, any product coming out. If there's still product, then it's still combustible. And when we're compacting the recyclables at very high pressures, it can cause an explosion and a fire.
Okay, so another thing to remember, very, very serious.
Empty.
And something with the small propane tanks, the little camp size ones, the mini ones, people will think because it's not powering the camp grill that it's empty. They're never completely empty. So those little propane tanks should never be placed in recycling bins or carts.
Okay. Let's go on with other things that work, that we can recycle.
Cartons.
Yes.
Familiar cartons.
Yes.
Yes.
And things that have some kind of foil on the inside. You recycle those?
Yep,
Well,
cartons are very unique. They're very special. They're created with a layering system. They have shape. We can sort them, and we have a recycler that just buys cartons. So, for the most part, we don't want waterproof cardboard that's been treated or waxed so that it won't break down when it gets wet. But cartons are just very unique, designed very differently, and we're able to sort and sell them.
And that's an important point that Krystal just made too, is that people think that if something is recyclable, anything man-made should be able to be recyclable. Well, that's if we have a customer, because the recycling process is a manufacturing process, and we have people at the other end who purchase these materials specifically to turn them into something new. And if we don't have that customer, and if we can't get the customer the material and the quantity and the quality that they need, there is no recycling that will happen. So those are key factors, because people ask us, well, why can't I recycle a pen?
Right.
It's made of plastic. Well, I don't have a customer who will accept those types of plastics.
this looks like it's waxed to me. That's not. What
It's
you're
not.
saying.
Nope, it's actually a layering system. This one has a 3-layer system, and this one has a 5-layer system. So this is like the one you would put in your fridge, and this is the shelf-stable one that you can actually buy in the middle aisle of the grocery store. And both types of cartons are recyclable in Rhode Island.
All right, so that's good to know.
Yeah.
That's a lot. And what is made from those? Do we know?
Building material.
Yeah.
And,
Building material.
This one has a foil layer too, so they can actually separate out the foil layer from the paper layer.
Okay. And let's talk about other things.
Sure.
How about clothing, textiles and things?
Yeah.
You're concerned that textiles will get into your machines.
Yeah.
Right, so they can actually get caught up, spin around the equipment in the facility, and if they get really hot, they can ignite. And we've had fires from, say, bed sheets or towels that people have put in their recycling bin. The good news is every clothing, I say clothing because that's usually how it's labeled, clothing donation bin in Rhode Island accepts all dry, odorless textiles. So whether that's Big Brothers Big Sisters, Planet Aid, Goodwill, Salvation Army, all of those bins that we see in church parking lots and grocery store parking lots and at schools will all take all dry, odorless textiles. So not just your gently used clothing, but things that are ripped or torn or stained, your single sock, and things that aren't apparel, sheets, towels, things like that. And you can just bag all those items up together. You can put those in the bin. Some of them will be resold. That's what people think of, resold in a consignment shop. Some of them absolutely will. Others will go on to be repaired. Other things will go on to be repurposed. And the final thing is to actually recycle it back down into the fibers and make things like insulation under carpeting and in automobiles. So there's different uses for all those different types of textiles. They just don't go in your bin or cart at home.
So there must be a huge business right now, a huge group of entrepreneurs looking at all of this and saying, what can we do with it?
Absolutely. It is certainly a growing industry on the one hand, but the key really is to get the recyclables to that customer in the condition that they need. And that's the challenge at the curb. And that's why we launched this public education campaign about what not to put in your bin or cart, because we're finding that people are putting things in that are unintentionally contaminating the rest of the recycling. And we just can't sell it when it's contaminated, covered with paint, for example, or coated with food or dirty diapers, things that just don't belong at all in a recycling bin or cart.
Right, but do go well in the trash.
Absolutely.
Okay. Other things. Plastic bags. Now, most people think if they knot them up and throw them in that you can take those.
If they knot them up, they can go into the trash if they have to, but really Rhode Island has a great program. And we had, again, the first comprehensive statewide plastic bag recycling program in the country. And you can find plastic bag recycling in all large supermarkets, big box stores like Target, Walmart, and in the pharmacies. Even some of the smaller IGAs also have the recycling. And it's not just plastic bags.
Right. So the rule of thumb here, with the exception of that clingy food wrap, that has to go in the trash. Anything else is plastic bag or film, and it's sort of see-through, sort of stretchable, so you can kind of see through it, you can kind of stretch it. It can go in the bin. So things like bubble wrap, you can see through it, you can stretch it. A lot of consumer products come in bags like this. See through it, you can stretch it. Even the liners from cereal boxes, you can see through them. You can stretch them a little. They're hard, but you can stretch them a little bit. Your bread bags, your sandwich bags, the bag your newspaper came in, all of these are fairly see-through.
What we have?
Yes. Lots of bags and film.
At the end of a week, I sort of look at what we're recycling and what we're throwing away and what we're composting, and I think, my heavens, for one person to live, it certainly does impact the earth.
We all have these materials, and as much as we all want to just put them in one bin at the end of the curb, some products do take a little bit more effort, and this is one of them, but really not a lot more effort, because don't we all go to the grocery store?
Everyone has to go back to the grocery, the pharmacy sometimes. So you set them aside, and once your bag gets full, you can bring it and drop it off the next time you go.
I think of plastic bags as being a very efficient way to package things. However, you're talking with various people around the country and CEOs of corporations who are packaging, like Procter & Gamble or something like that, who are trying to think about packaging in a new way. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Well, the goal of packaging from the manufacturer's standpoint is to get that product to the consumer in the condition that the manufacturer intends and that the consumer wants. So we understand that. And my job in the conversation is to make sure that the manufacturers understand that once the consumer has consumed the product, they want to take action. They want to then do their part. And their part, they feel, is recycling, and not everything is recyclable. A great example is the Pringles canister, right? The nice tall canister. Well, you have 4 or 5 different materials in that one canister, which renders it non-recyclable. You have
not Pringles, but very
correct,
close.
Exactly. So you've got metal, you've got cardboard,
you've got foil
plastic,
on the inside.
Foil on the inside. There's no way to completely take those components apart to then properly recycle them. So that, unfortunately, has no place else to go but trash. However, Pringles in the small serving size, it's a plastic container, completely recyclable. So my job is to communicate to the makers of Pringles, why not do it all in the recyclable container? And again, it gets to branding, it gets to market share. I'm not concerned about that part. I'm concerned about that part. And so making them more aware of the options, that's part of what we have to do, and we are doing it.
Because you're doing it for the future, aren't you?
Sure,
I mean,
absolutely.
Both of you are dedicated to the fact that all of these products impact the future in some way.
Absolutely.
You bet.
If we look at the current rate at which we're creating trash in Rhode Island, our one sole central landfill will be full by 2038. Run out of
It'll
room.
be 10,000 feet high, huh?
No, actually, it won't be any
1,000.
higher.
Yeah.
It's expanding outward. It's not going to be any
I
higher
see.
than it is right now, but we'll reach sort of our capacity for where we can develop and fill. So, that space is really precious, and we should be using it for things where there's no market for. We can't recycle it. We can't put it in our bin. We can't compost it. We can't drop it off at the store for recycling. That's what that space should be used for. And unfortunately, we still see a lot of items that are perfectly recyclable winding up in the trash.
What happens to leaf and yard waste? That's another big one.
Yeah.
You just take that stuff
Yeah.
and dump it in that bin, and you don't have to think about it again.
Well, the good news about leaf and yard waste is it's actually one of the highest recovered materials in Rhode Island. We recycle leaf and yard debris at a very high rate, and it's fantastic. When it comes to us, and we don't want it all to come to us. Actually, there are some private composters. We want them to have more material. When it comes to us, we turn it into a Class A compost, which means it can be used in any application. It can even be used in organic farming. It is that high of a quality. So we're turning that into a very rich soil amendment, which Rhode Island desperately needs. And Rhode Island has one of the highest rates of small farmers, and a lot more farms are popping up, which is wonderful. So we're very pleased to be able to produce this great soil amendment for use in
So
locally.
you grind it up, and it's very fine. And where do people buy that?
Right at Resource Recovery, right in Johnston.
So if you have a garden and you're wondering what to do this year about
Yes.
enhancing your soil, please go
Yes.
to what street is it in
It's on
Johnston?
Shun Pike in Johnston, and it's actually exit 5 off Route 295.
Our name's right on the exit.
Yep. Easy
Okay,
to find.
and you won't be sorry, and both of you will be there, I'm sure.
Yes.
Okay, the other thing you were talking about was food. Sometimes food ends up in some of these containers.
So, again, empty at a minimum, rinse whenever possible. There's certain things that it's really hard to rinse. So do we expect everyone to get their peanut butter jar completely clean? No, but we would like you to scrape out as much as possible.
Does that attract rats and et cetera in your facility? Is that why you're concerned, or?
Well, it just reduces the quality of the product overall that we're selling. A lot of people think that when we get the stuff, I've heard this from people, oh, I thought you just melted it all together, or I thought you guys washed it. No, it has to go through our process. It has to be baled into these really large cubes, and then it's going to be sent to a recycler. There's a lot of time between when you finish that peanut butter jar and when it's actually going to be recycled. So you want it as clean as possible for that process in between.
When you think about the future and packaging, what do you wish the most right now that could happen as new products are coming on the market? I don't see a lot of creative thinking about reduced packaging. When I see something that comes on the market, that's exciting, I still see product that's contained in something.
Yeah, I guess that closed loop mentality where making your product out of the packaging for the product something that is kind of universally 100% recyclable becomes a point of marketing. It becomes something that companies can be proud of and that people want to choose packaging. When they're educated about what can and cannot be recycled, they would prefer to choose the product when they know they can recycle all the packaging. So just sort of that mentality that is a good thing, that is a good quality for a company to
have. So making environmental concern a part of process,
design.
a part of
Absolutely.
marketing,
Correct.
could be a really good thing to do.
That's right. What we're seeing too is, and again, it's all grabbing market share, right? It's very competitive business, and we're seeing a lot of flexible pouch-style packaging. That cannot be recycled in our program. So it may be, there's like kind of the squirtable baby food containers and things of that nature. You're seeing a lot of that. It's not available here. So getting us more involved up front, understanding what the end will be at the beginning. So again, as Krystal said, kind of closing the loop and making it a full circle is important.
You can imagine a television ad which says something at the end, and it's recyclable.
Sure.
And that means certainly I'm going to buy it more rapidly than,
Television, actually, a great example of a product that in Rhode Island, the manufacturers that are selling TVs and computers in Rhode Island, they actually will pay for the process, the end life of their product. So they have to factor that in. There's a law in Rhode Island that says, do you want to sell TVs here? You want to sell computers here? There's a take-back program for them. We have a state program. We have 5 collections around the state. But a lot of the private companies will also do take-backs. And that is covered by the manufacturers, so they are starting to think about the end life of their products more because of the law like that.
And it gives them a kickback or not?
No, they're just responsible for making sure that the products are responsibly recycled. So they have to pay.
It's amazing that that's a law.
It is, yes. And we were one of the first ones. I think we were number 11 or 12 in the country to pass that law. Now it's about 25 or 26. And we have 4 other laws that do the same. So Rhode Island is really on the forefront of looking at these products and how we can better manage them and take care of them. Mattresses is coming up next. So that's the next product. We just passed one for paint. And we have mercury products as well. So we're really looking towards the future.
So if I were to recycle a TV, what would I do?
Most cities and towns have a drop-off for a local one. Everyone is welcome to come to Resource Recovery to drop off all these special items. But if you call your city or town's Department of Public Works, chances are they'll tell you, there's probably one right up the street from you where you can drop it off for recycling.
So everyone's trying to make it easier as well.
Yes.
Well, we congratulate you for all your work and your education. You told me you go to nursing homes and...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Nursery school to nursing home and everything in between.
So
We do
every
outreach
one
in the
of us
community.
needs to know more about it.
Absolutely.
My dream is that there's this huge, my nightmare is that there's this huge trash dump in the ocean. And that we could take, my dream is that we could take boats out there that have essentially a vacuum, and they could vacuum up all of this stuff, and then it could become road surfaces. Now, probably that's not true, but I really want to get that out of the ocean, and maybe someone will bring it all to you.
Well, the key, I think, too, is to have it not get in the ocean in the first place.
Well, yes.
Absolutely.
So the prevention is the biggest piece. And, so no, we're not only talking about recycling at the bin, but how can we reduce litter, whether it's windblown or tossed out of a car? How do we get that to be important as well? Because if it never makes it to the ocean, there's no problem.
And I think a lot of people think that litter is solely the product of someone taking something and pitching it out of their car window. But a lot of times the way that we prepare our trash, if we are putting trash loose into a trash bin and the truck has to pick that up and empty it, drive it to our facility, empty it out at our facility. If it's in the landfill, we have to run over that trash. We have to compact it. We have to get most trash in the smallest spaces possible. There's opportunities all along the way there where something that's really, really lightweight can become windblown litter. So, just the act of bagging your trash and securing it in a trash bag before you setting it out is one huge way to reduce the amount of litter that ends up in the ocean.
Wow, you've got a lot of good advice for us. We're about to hear about how our trash is affecting the ocean, which is why I brought that up. But I think that it's really important for all of us to be moral leaders in our own way and to take responsibility for everything we use, which is way too much, in my opinion. I'd like to see a change in that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I want to thank you both for being here and certainly wish you so much luck in what you're doing, and please come back and tell us more as things develop.
We would love to.
It's fun to hear, but it's also moving. It's very moving, so thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Good News Rhode Island. We're sure there's good news around you, and certainly you are recycling and reprocessing things as well. So thank you, and keep watching Good News Rhode Island. Thank you.